get woken up by a knock on the door. It was around midnight and I was like, I must be hearing things. And then again it got louder and I'm like, oh no, maybe Damian's left his keys somewhere and he can't get in, or maybe he just came home early. And I grabbed our big mag torch, the light on and shining it up the hallway as I went to check the garage door, looked through the side glass on my door and I could see.
Welcome, Sonya. Thanks for joining me on my cheeky podcast. How you feeling?
Good. Thank you for having me, Lindsay. It's been a long time. It's nice to catch up.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I just said to you when you arrived today, which is, weird, but let's acknowledge that so our listeners get to hear as well. You and I used to train together. That's how we first met.
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm a diehard.
You're
part
still
of the cult.
there. And if I didn't live so far away,
Yes.
I would still go there.
Yeah.
I just loved it. It's one of my favourite gyms. It was just
F45 Nerang. I'll just give them a plug.
We loved it. I just loved everyone there, and it's just the distance thing for me. But that's how we met, and we became good gym buddies. And never really socialised. Well, we didn't socialise on the outside, did we? But we it was one of those gyms where while you're working out, I'm not so sure how much working out we did, but we'd, kind of share snippets from each other's stories and things like that. The crazy thing is, here we are, had we have, said to each other at the gym that you'd be here sitting on one of my lounges and we'd be having this podcast and talking about grief and, children and mamas and everything else that comes with it is crazy, really. But life kind of comes full circle, doesn't it?
Sure does.
So it's an absolute privilege to have you here. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. So let's go pre-kids, pre-meeting Damian.
Yeah.
Let's go as far as when you first joined the police force.
Okay. So I was 24 at the time, which was pretty young back then. These days, I think they take them a bit younger than that.
Yeah.
But I was one of the youngest in my squad. Not the youngest, but one of the youngest. But I thought I was very mature, very grown up, very worldly. I was married for the first time not long before I joined the police. And it was just the job that I wanted to do since I was 15. So it was one of the biggest career moves of my life and the only career I've had since then.
Yeah.
So I guess...
Was it what you always, like you said at 15, it was something that you always wanted to do? And obviously I've read your book and we'll get into that after.
Yeah.
But for everyone else's benefit, is it something, and why had the police why had you gravitated to the police force? What was it about that?
So for me, it was always, I've come back to that now full circle after being in for nearly 22 years, was helping people.
Yeah.
I just had this need to serve the community. And however I had to do that it was going to happen either way, whether it was in the armed forces, the police. I crossed out nursing when I was younger because my brother had an accident. There was blood everywhere and I decided I didn't like that.
That's not for you.
No, not for me. And then when I was 15, transitioning from year 10 to 11 and starting year 11, we had a detective come and speak to us in legal studies. And she was from the Juvenile Aid Bureau, as it was called at the time. And she worked out at Logan Central, and I was absolutely enamoured by her. I thought she was the bee's knees. Her work sounded interesting. It sounded like the exact thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it basically came out that she was, for the most part, the rewarding parts, helping kids, helping families, while enforcing the law. And because I'm such a stickler for the rules, I went, well, that sounds like the right job for me.
Yeah.
So my studies after that just led me down that path. I did divert for a little while and thought maybe that corporate law was the place that I wanted to be, but I don't think I should ever have been working in an office. It just didn't suit me.
Just wasn't you.
No, not at all. So once I'd tried that and decided that the 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 7 to 5 in the afternoon wasn't for me, I put my application in and got into the academy. And at the time they had a big recruiting drive, which was great. So I think there were about 8 intakes a year at that time, and there would have been about 80 to 90 recruits per intake.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, that was, a pretty big achievement to get in. I didn't know that I would, considering I'm not very tall, but they'd taken the height restrictions away to open up the applicant pool, which
For the
was
short
great.
people.
Yeah, all the short people who can't jump over walls. And let me tell you, I am not the shortest copper that I've ever worked with. So that's probably a bonus.
Yeah.
Makes me feel like I'm 10 foot tall when I'm standing next to some of my girlfriends. I guess policing or even helping the community was probably in my blood. My dad is a retired 40-year paramedic. So
Amazing.
he would often come home and tell us stories about who he'd saved that day, or, going to car accidents and having people cut out of cars, and then, him being able to keep their heart going until they got to the hospital where the doctors could do their thing. Or delivering babies on the side of the road, or, just different things where I was like, oh, he's bringing life into the world, or he's keeping someone alive until the doctors can do their specialist work.
Yeah.
And I went, even though I'm not into the medical stuff or the blood, policing was for me.
Yeah.
A stickler for the rules. I love the law. I love learning that sort of thing. And being out in the community and talking to people just became part of me.
Yeah.
So all the skills that I learnt at the academy, the resilience and just that grunt to get through life is something that's stuck with me since then. So, and the skills that I've needed after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in your book, you talk about when you were actually because you lived on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate to that in a way, a small way, but my brother was in the police force as well. So I remember his days on campus. But that's when you briefly saw Damian, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was he a couple of months ahead of you in his training?
So he was the January intake and I was the March intake 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd seen him whipping around the obstacle course.
Yeah, like a madman. I'd never seen anything like it, just bouncing over the obstacles. It was like insane. And I'm going, how do you do that? Because I can't do that.
But nothing. Yeah, he was scaling them. You were going round them.
I was running into them and then cracking up and losing my focus. Like, I went, oh, okay, I'm just going to give up.
Yeah. So, but at that point, you're just not really giving him another thought. You carried on
I hadn't.
doing.
I was married at the time as
well. That's right.
So we literally would pass in the halls and he was there and he stood out because he had red hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was his nickname too, right?
Yeah.
Ranga.
Yeah.
Ranga and Damo.
And Damo, Lido. I won't tell you the other. Oh, okay, I'll tell you the other one because we're talking about how fit he was. So, and I didn't find this out until after the academy when one of his mates said, "Oh, you want to know what his nickname was at the academy, son?" I'm like, "What?" They go, "It was Stiffy." I said, "What do you mean?" And they go, "Because he was always out in front." And I went, "Really? Okay."
They love a nickname.
Points for being creative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that stuck with him, right?
No,
One
I
of
think
them.
that one got left at the academy. I'm pretty sure not many people knew about that.
Oh, that's gold. So then from you graduating in the academy, is that what they call it?
Yep.
Graduating? Yeah. You graduate in the academy and then your first job posting.
Yeah.
So where was your first posting on the Gold Coast? Was it?
So I first started at Broadbeach Station.
Broadbeach.
So I was there for 3 months in my first year.
And then when did your paths cross with Damian?
So it didn't cross until I was 6 months into my first year. And I was at Southport Station for my last 6 months. And by then my first marriage was over. Only newly over, so I wasn't interested in anything.
Yeah.
Nothing serious. I was just having fun and enjoying my career and making friends and, just living the social
And
life.
so young yourself
Yeah,
still
absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah.
Such a baby, really.
Yeah, so we met at the old Southport Station before it was knocked down and rebuilt. And, we'd sling comments at each other across the day room and there'd be sledges and it would just be one thing after another. And, I pretty much behaved like I was one of the boys.
Yeah.
So whatever I gave out, he gave back just as quick. And I was like, oh.
Met my match here.
Yeah, what is going on? No one's like that. I think I've been told that I can be intimidating, so I can only figure that the other guys were intimidated and they couldn't be bothered trying to engage.
Yeah.
Whereas Damian went, ha, no worries.
Yeah.
I'll have a bash and
Yeah.
see how
Here
we
we go.
Yeah. And it just started like that. We were just mates, and I was living with one of my uni girlfriends at the time down at Broadbeach, and I get a text message from Damo one day saying, hey, Son, I hear you need a flatmate. And I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't want a male flatmate. I just, it's nicer to live with a girl, and men are messy and all the rest of it. And other than work, I didn't really know him very well. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, oh, I'm ready to move out of the barracks, because that was down at Coolangatta at the time. And I'm like, oh, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, she's moving out in a couple of weeks. I'm going to need someone to pay the rent, help pay the rent.
Yeah.
All right then, let's see how it goes. So he moved into the spare room to start with. And life went on, and we were really good mates from there. So we had, a fair few months getting to know each other as friends and flatmates, and picking up on each other's habits and seeing whether we could actually live together, which is probably a decent start to a relationship, I would have thought. Not many people have that these days. They move in and then it all falls apart.
Exactly.
So we did that for a few months, and then eventually we both decided that, well, I shouldn't say that, because I've been told that once he decided that he wanted to be with me, that was it. Whereas I was like, no, I'm still too young. I'm going out and party, and I want to do all this stuff, and I just don't want to settle down, and I'm quite happy just having a roommate. Well, I could only fight that for so long.
Yeah.
And then I realised that he was the guy for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the rest is kind of history after that. In the end, it was good. We were together, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And what year was that?
So we moved in together 2004. I don't think we got together until 2005, maybe. I'm trying to think. Or maybe it was the end of 2004. And then we got engaged in 2006. So, yeah, everything sort of moved along,
And
reasonably quick.
Your engagement, he proposed hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Which
over the Narang Forest, so I really had no choice but to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing, didn't he?
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. I was trapped. No, not really.
How beautiful,
I was going to say yes anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Make him work for it a little bit.
Yeah, I did wonder why he was very quiet and a bit shaky that day. I was like, what's going on? It's just a hot air balloon ride. You're not scared of heights, are you?
Yeah.
No. And next minute, I'm like, oh, now this is happening.
This makes sense.
He gets down on one knee and says, says his little piece, and he couldn't get many words out, and he was like, I love you, babe. And then he literally choked up and just gave me the ring. And I'm like, and I sort of looked at him and he goes, is it a yes? I'm like, of course it's a yes.
How gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you knew that it was on the wall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, in your engagement party, you had your engagement party at a place where it was going to become very significant, but for the wrong reasons, right? Which we'll get to. But so you bought a house together.
Yep.
Everything sort of evolved from there, exciting, getting the new house, talking about children and marriage.
Oh, he talked about children the minute we got together, and I was like, hey,
let's slow
remember how I
down.
said before I got together with you that I didn't want a relationship? I don't want to have kids either. I'm too young. I've got too much party left in me. No. And then, eventually we decided to want to have a family, and I went, oh, this isn't working how it was supposed to. It's meant to be quick, isn't it? When you want a baby, you get a baby.
Yeah, doesn't work like that.
No.
So you got married.
Yep.
And then was it pretty much then after marriage you were like, yes, let's try for a baby, or were you just enjoying married life? And
no, we didn't start trying for probably 12 to 18 months after we got married. We both had, I'm just trying to think. Oh, that's right. So just after our 1 year anniversary, Damian got a job in the Criminal Investigation Bureau, the CIB at Coomera, in the new office that was set up there. So that was in 2007. And then not long after that, we decided, maybe we should think about having a family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, both of you then were working long hours, I would imagine. It's
Yeah.
fairly substantial shift work and almost like passing ships in the night sometimes.
Yeah.
So trying for a baby, the best time to have you in the same house at the same time would be a bit of a challenge.
Yes,
sometimes.
I tried to do the let's plan this and what have you, but being a woman having a cycle that was all over the shop, it was almost impossible. So it was just throw caution to the wind and see what happens.
Yeah.
And literally nothing happened. Nothing happened for 13 months.
Yeah.
And on my 30th birthday, I found out I was pregnant with Hudson.
And you were about to do the big birthday bash that night.
Yeah, we had a Bollywood party planned on the Sunday. And I thought, I better do a test and see whether I can have a drink this weekend or not.
So you obviously had an inkling.
I had an inkling.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was time.
Yeah.
And I did the test and it was, I don't know, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning because I had appointments to go to and different things happening and food to cook and all that sort of stuff to prepare. Did the test, left it sitting there, came back and went, oh shit, there's 2 lines. I'm like, I've got to go. Damian was still in bed, so I literally walked into the bedroom, threw it at his head. I said, I think we're having a baby. I'm going to go. I'll talk to you later.
Nothing romantic about that. No big reveal then.
No. And in my head, I'm thinking, it can't possibly be real. It's probably a false one again, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I went,
I've got a spray tan to get.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe I actually am. And my mum actually came up that morning to help with the cooking and she goes, are you drinking this weekend? And I went, no. She goes, hey, are you pregnant? And I went, I think so. I did a test and it looked pretty positive this time, not faint. And she goes, oh my God. And I went, I know, let's not get excited because I haven't been to the doctor.
Yeah.
And that had to wait till the following week. So, yeah, we got through the party. I managed to pick glasses up and put them down every time someone gave me a drink. There were that many champagne glasses all over my backyard by the end of the night that someone could easily have drunk all of them. But, I didn't. I had my looks like champagne is not champagne in my glass. I'd sneak into the kitchen and put the non-alcoholic in my glass. So,
I remember doing that.
Yeah. So, that was falling pregnant with Hudson after what felt like forever. And I know lots of people have far worse experiences with fertility and what have you. Yeah, it finally happened. And I was like, I'm finally doing this, even though I wanted to do it, that many months ago.
Yeah.
So
those months would have felt like when you're trying, I think, and there's a part where you say as soon as you took the pressure off, that's when you felt and I know obviously for so many listeners it doesn't work like that. I know that it's a lot more difficult, but it's amazing once you do take the pressure off yourself and just go about your life, how it can change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Hudson was born on the 6th of July.
He was.
Which is actually my dad's birthday.
Yeah.
That's how I remember that. And Hudson, which is my little boy, like Charlie's middle name.
Yeah,
which
that's one of the things we bonded over at the gym.
It was,
you're like, I've got a Hudson, a Charlie Hudson.
Yeah, I love that name. If it wasn't Charlie, if it wasn't his middle name, it would have been his first name. So how did you pick that name?
I didn't pick it. Damian picked it.
Did he?
Yeah, we couldn't choose. It was... I wanted Parker because at the time, I don't even know where it came from. But then Desperate Housewives was on and the character that Felicity Huffman ended up having these twins and one was Parker and they were really naughty. And I went, I just don't know.
Isn't I'm going to have to wait. Why do we do that?
Well, Grace was going to be Ruby until Packed to the Rafters had this baby. Rebecca Gibney had this baby in it and they called her Ruby and I went, she's not going to be Ruby.
Yeah.
Because I like the Plain White T's song Ruby.
Yeah.
And she goes, really, Mum? You were going to call me Ruby? I said, yeah, because of this song. Here, listen to it. And she goes, it's not even a great song. I'm like, yeah, but I loved it. So you were going to be Ruby, so I could sing that to you.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So no, Hudson what was I doing? I think I was ironing. And Damian had the baby name book because I went, I'm lost. I don't know. I've got Parker.
So many.
That's it. Damo,
You knew you were having a boy then? Or had you picked
No.
a boy and a girl's name?
We'd only picked boys' names. We didn't pick any girls'
Right.
names because I just went, I don't know. I just don't know. I'd always said, if we have a girl, she's going to be called Grace after my mum's mum.
Yeah.
But I wasn't confident I was having a girl because I wasn't.
Yeah.
So Damian says to me, what about Hudson? And I went, yeah, Hudson Leading. Yeah, I could do that. There's not many Hudsons around.
No.
Until we had him.
Yeah, I know.
And it was the trend at the time.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's how Hudson came about. And when he was born, as soon as we saw him, he goes, what are we going to call him? I said, well, he's definitely not a Parker. So he's going to be a Hudson.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was Hudson.
And I remember, obviously, images of Hudson when he was a baby, which we'll get to in the next part of the story. But was he born with a big mop of hair, or did those curls just gradually grow and grow and grow?
He had straight hair when he was born, but it was bright orange like Damo.
Yeah.
And I literally looked at him and went, I've just carried that for 10 months. Where's my look in? I didn't get a look in at all. He was like, if you held the two of them up together, they were identical. And it just cracked me up. I was like, I've just done, and this is a really short labour too, I've just done 12 hours of labour and I've had this baby and I've carried him for 10 months and...
You would not even know he's mine.
I don't even... What the heck? It was just, this random, and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, well, Damian's happy. That's great. I've done my bit.
Yeah, that's it. Now you can help a bit.
Yeah.
So with take Hudson home and you've gone from living your life, the two of you, working full time, shift work, still enjoying a really good social life, great friends, great family. Then you've got this baby, this beautiful boy. You've taken him home. Overwhelmed?
Complete. Considering I thought I was born with the mummy gene.
Yeah.
I got him home and went, the birth didn't go as I'd planned. I don't know why they tell you to have a birthing plan. I think just go with the flow.
Oh, no. Mine was just like Missy Higgins played on repeat over and over again.
Which song? All of it. Oh, my God.
For about 12 hours to the point, and then one of the nurses said... Do you mind if we just take that off? And I was like, I hadn't even noticed. They were just like, it is driving us insane. I think one midwife had gone home, slept, come back, and it was still going.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like,
That's
oops, that didn't go. Yeah, I was thinking it was all going to be no. Anyways.
Yeah, same here. Best laid plans, right?
Yeah, no, it's a farce. Well, it might not be for a lot of people, but I just definitely didn't have that down pat. No.
I'm like, why did no one tell me about how horrific this is? Why is it such a big secret?
Yeah, exactly. Let's get it out there. So overwhelmed for you. Do you think, because you spoke in your book about you being quite the perfectionist and putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
So do you think that with the birthing plan, I'm not saying it was about that, but just going back home with Hudson, the three of you, and almost having this, and especially being in the forces and everything has to be regimented and, protocols and all. Do you think that was part of it? Like you'd
100%.
almost put this huge pressure on yourself with what it was supposed to look like, and it looked nothing like that?
Yeah, it looked nothing like it. I mean, I knew it was going to be a life-changing thing.
Of course.
But I didn't think it would be a life-changing event that I would resent.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to talk about my child like that, but
no.
and it wasn't necessarily him, but it was how I coped with it. And I guess as someone who'd suffered depression from such a young age, I probably should have been slightly more aware that that might have affected me.
Yeah.
But when I got home and Hudson screamed 24/7 unless he was feeding. And then in the afternoons he would feed for like 4 hours, which was ridiculous. So I
just on demand.
And I was like, what do I do? And, people give you books to read and I'm thinking, I don't have time to read this book about how I'm supposed to get my baby to sleep or how I'm supposed to do this and why isn't this working? I'm meant to be a mum. I wanted to be a mum.
Yeah.
And I really resented what my life looked like. I just found it so difficult that, you know, the lack of sleep, not that I slept a lot anyway, but I guess with depression sometimes you can't get out of bed. And so because I was crashing and felt like that,
And no
having
sleep
to get up
deprived.
to a child
Yeah.
who's screaming and wants you and
Yeah.
needs to be on you, oh, yeah, it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely blew my mind. So, yeah, I definitely had postnatal depression. I did not go and get diagnosed or anything like that. I wouldn't go to
Why
mothers
was
groups.
that? Was there a shame in that, for a better word? Like, I'm not using that loosely because there should be no shame in it at all. But when you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
you know, and you kind of thinking tomorrow will be a better day. Yeah, I'd imagine. You're
Yeah.
sleep deprived. Your
Yeah.
milk's just coming on.
And you think, oh, well, maybe my baby's going to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then when they don't, and that goes on for the first few weeks.
Yeah.
And I think Damian had literally just gone back to work because I think he had the first 5 weeks off. So I wouldn't have been very pleasant to be living around at that time. And he went back to work and I thought, great, I can do this mum thing. It's going to be Hudson and I, and we're just going to take on the world. And that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, I thought, oh, I'm going to go socialise and do all these things. And I'd do them, but it would just, I needed to spend that time to get into a routine or something which I'm used to. And I didn't do that. And to the point where one day I went, I've had enough. So I started driving and kept driving thinking, I just wish there was a big truck that I can drive myself into with Hudson
It was
in the car.
that dark. It was that.
It was horrible. And I just remember driving along these windy roads going, if I just lost control and did it fast enough. But I also knew, being in the police, that if I didn't do it right, we would just be damaged. And I didn't want to be damaged, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess the thought was there, the intent was there, but I also went, I don't know if I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. So I took a right turn up. We call it the panorama. Damian and I had been on a date there years ago when there weren't houses all up the top. We stopped in a spare vacant block and we sat there and ate prawns all night and had a glass of wine and then drove back down and watched the lights and what have you.
Yeah.
So I drove up there with Hudson screaming in the car. And I thought, I'm not actually going to do anything because I'm literally doing 30 Ks trying to get up this hill. That's not fast enough to do anything.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the top and took a breath and looked out over the Gold Coast, I was able to go, okay, I've got to calm myself down. Drove down the other side and went, I'm going to go to Robina Town Centre. That's a good place to go. I'm going to take my baby in and pretend that I'm okay.
How beautiful, just to, oh my gosh.
You know, because you've got to put on the brave face that I've got to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I went there and I'm walking through with him in the pram and he's screaming and I'm like, I need to find a mother's room because I really don't want to sit in public and feed him. I had a real issue with that. I got used to it after a while, but I just didn't want to because he was screaming his head off, so much so that people were looking at me.
Yeah, I was a bit
oddly.
like that too. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this isn't working.
You're already, obviously, your emotions are heightened. Yeah.
So I got back in the car, drove back to Mum and Dad's. And they didn't live far from us. And I said to Mum, like I was just a mess. And my cousin was staying with them at the time. And he was just sitting there looking at me like, you've just had a baby. What the heck's going on? Like I couldn't control myself. Dad took Hudson and managed to settle him walking up and down the hallway. And they managed to settle me a bit. But by the time I'd had dinner and then got home to put Hudson to bed, I got back home and the feelings of hopelessness and that resentment, that awful, like it was an awful angry resentment, came back. So I put Hudson down in the middle of the floor and I walked away and I called my mum and I said, you need to get up here. I said, I can't do this. And then they called Damian and said, can you come home from work? Something's not good.
Yeah.
And then from there, because he was like, what's going on? Because I hid a lot of that from him.
Yeah,
I had said to him, I resent the way our life's changed.
Yeah.
And he was like, because I knew all he wanted was to have a family.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I don't want to be at home all day. I don't want to have to, live my life around what this child needs.
Yeah.
But
Who's
that was exactly,
crying all the
it was
time.
exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So until I worked that out, that hang on a minute, I need to look after Hudson's needs first and get him sorted. And once he's sorted, because he was obviously feeding off my energy
Of
as well,
course, yeah.
as babies do. So he would have known that mum wasn't well and been feeling the same way, I would have thought, and hence the screaming and the unrest and, you know, what have you. So that was a big turning point where Damian went, it's going to be okay. We can do this together. I can stay home a bit longer. And I went, no, it's okay. We're going to be okay. And so eventually Hudson did settle a bit more. He needed more food, which was the issue. So we swapped from breastfeeding, which again was a big issue. I wanted to breastfeed for a really long time and bottle fed him and he slept. And I'm like...
And there's so much...
the pressure.
The breastfeeding, again, of how that's supposed to look and all of that comes with it. But did you feel like once you'd... Again, there's that stigma of how a new mum should look and have it all together. And I think with, you know... People look like they've got it all together, but really, none of us know what goes on behind closed doors.
Because we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
I mean, maybe more now, but...
Definitely didn't then, right? It was taboo. And so once you'd sort of offloaded that to family, Damian in particular, that would have felt like pressure was off and you
100%.
could kind of go, okay, well now... things are pretty grim, but we know now we can start building on this.
Yeah, they knew exactly where I was at and how I was feeling. And so, excuse me.
It's okay.
Once I'd sort of let everyone know where I was at, I kind of went, okay, well, I don't have to carry this as much anymore. It was, definitely a burden lifted and shared.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, so... you know, my parents have obviously done an awful lot for us my entire life, and that was just one of the things. Yeah.
And they, like, especially for parents and a partner, of course, but parents as well, they want to be wanted.
Yeah.
Don't they? Like, we find, and I've certainly done it in the past, where I've pushed them out a little bit to not burden them, when in actual fact they feel burden when you're not putting anything on them or reaching out to them, because they want to help, as we do with our kids.
Yeah, of course.
So you get into your groove, things start looking good.
Yeah.
Hudson's getting his belly full.
Yes.
he's you know, life's looking good. The three of you're into your groove.
Yep.
You go back to work.
Yeah, Hudson was 4 or 5 months old.
Yeah. And so... And that was good because you had family rally round and all that. So you all sort of worked together as a team. Did you feel that timing was right for you to go back to work then? Were you ready for it then?
Probably not, because I'd literally just got into the groove of being a mum. And then it was like, oh, no, you've got to go back to being this police officer as well. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this?
Why didn't you take longer then? Was it not a choice then, or was it...
Not really, no. Financially, it was...
Right.
I had to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's changed now, though, isn't it? Don't they give them more extended parental leave and all those types of things now?
From my understanding, you can take a certain amount of leave
and
without
then part pay. Or without
or
pay.
part pay. Or, and I'm not sure what the government's doing these days, but because we were entitled at the time to, I think it was 14 weeks paid maternity leave. And then the government was also doing 14 weeks, because I was like, oh, this is great. So that gives me a bit more. And then I had some rec leave. And by then I think I used some long service leave as well.
Right.
Yeah. And that was all I had available. So I was like, in my head, when I took it, I went, oh, yeah, that's fine. I don't need all that time off.
It just goes like that.
Yeah,
right.
I know.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously with the issues that I had, it took me a while to work out where I fit as a mum.
Yeah. Yeah, so were you quite upset were you quite emotional about a bit of separation anxiety going on, or were you okay with it?
Not so much emotional and separation anxiety. I thought that something would happen to me at work or I would die. That was my big fear.
Right.
And it was a fear of death was something that I've had from when I was little.
Yeah.
Like people around me would die and I didn't want mum and dad to die, and, you know, I've lost grandparents and what have you, and... I guess because they were older, it hurt, but they'd lived a life.
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, well, what if I die? Who's going to look after Hudson? And Damian would like, but I will. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm his mum.
Yeah.
What's
I think
gonna
it's a
happen?
whole different and again, I think that's the kind of, when you said you were in overwhelm after you had Hudson, subconsciously, that's such a big worry, in particular, I mean, for any parent, but in particular for mums, because no one's going to do it like we're going to do it.
No, I'm his mum.
I'm his mum, yeah. So that, and if you've always been inclined to think like that, put that on top. I mean, that's just magnified, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then, you know, going back and going, oh, I've only been off for, so it was 5 months, and then I think I was off for maybe a month before, so 6 months all up. Felt like I'd been away for a lifetime.
Yeah. And so when you went back to work, you knew Hudson was okay because obviously family all stepped in and your mum took some, did less hours at work and everything.
Mum volunteered to look after him.
And so you go back to work. Was it long before you sort of got back into your groove there at work?
No, it didn't take long. Like, I remember the first few shifts I was thinking, because the computer system had changed slightly as well. So I was like, oh, I've got to remember what to do. I can't remember how to do this. It's not really like riding a bike. But once I was in the swing of things, it was okay. And I was always worried that, given that I went back part-time, I didn't want anyone to think lesser of me or that I was less capable of doing my job. And that was a massive, you know, constant thought in my brain. That am I good enough? Am I going to put anyone in danger? I don't want to put my partners in danger. I still need to be operating up here.
What was he, 18-month-old when you got pregnant again with
9
Grace?
months old.
9 months
old. Pregnant.
Sorry.
He was 18 months old when I had Grace.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Surprise. And she was. It was like, uh-oh. I don't feel very well. Why does this food taste funny? I don't even like the wine. What's going on?
There's definitely something wrong.
Am I getting sick? And then I went, oh. And like I said earlier, my cycle was all over the shop. Even after I'd had Hudson, it was just, you couldn't track that.
Yeah.
I just never know what was going to happen. And so I thought, oh, I'd better do a test just to see. And literally the positive line came up before the control line. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay, this was not what was meant to happen. We were going to wait 2 years and then try again, which is a blessing now. But
yeah, of course.
I was like, oh, crap. And I had a race day that I was going to that day. And I thought, I'm not telling Damian. I'll tell him tomorrow. I'm going to go and have a couple of drinks. Not many, just a couple. And then I dropped Hudson off to Mum's and she goes, should you be drinking today? And I'm like, in my head I'm thinking, why is it? It's none of your business anyway. It's my body. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And she goes, okay, have a good day then. And then I felt really guilty.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to write myself off. I was going to have like 2 glasses of champagne. And I'm sitting at the races and I said...
You probably wouldn't have enjoyed the taste anyway. You were just talking it up in your head.
Yeah, next to Trudy, and I lean over and I go, I think I'm pregnant. She goes, what do you mean? And I went, well, you know, like when you're having a baby. I think I'm pregnant. And she goes, what are you drinking that for? I went, because I think I'm pregnant. And I'm like, in my head I'm going, how the fuck am I going to do this? I've already got a baby. I don't want another baby right now. Anyway, we did.
And pregnancy was good?
Pregnancy was good. Everything was good. Like it just, probably because of what I went through with Hudson.
Yeah.
I was able to manage the 2 kids and go, oh, this is like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hudson was a busy little boy, but I was used to that.
Yeah.
So by the time Grace came along, and lucky she was a good baby, she just ate and slept and get up and she was happy and she'd laugh and carry on and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you would have been aware of any signs had you have felt any different from what the first time and everyone around you would have been aware of that.
I was really cautious of that because I was so concerned about the first time. And so was Damian, and he would often check in on me and make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this is good. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah, this is great. He's like, how? Okay, this is different to the first time. I said, yeah, but this baby's different to Hudson. You know, Grace is different to Hudson.
Yeah.
She doesn't scream.
Yeah. So Damian's position at work in the police force? He was a plainclothes.
So yeah, he was a plainclothes senior constable at the time, and he was just about to apply for his detective's appointment.
Yeah, and had a name for himself though. A lot of
Very
people
much.
knew him.
Yep.
He was very good at his job, very efficient.
Yep, just loved it.
Just loved
He
it.
frothed on it, like it was just insane.
Yeah. I had a bit of a giggle at a comment that you said in the book about he'd go out for a run and come back and had seen somebody's car outside somebody's house and he needed to go back and investigate, and so he was never off the job really.
No.
Constantly.
And that's what I was concerned about. Like, he'd go running where we lived, and because he lived and worked in the same area, a lot of the offenders lived in the similar area, and he would go running for, an hour, 2 hours and do marathons at a time because he's insane.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, where are you going? Can you give me at least a little bit of, I'm just going to go on the far trail up there and do this. And I'm like,
she'll be right.
Can you wear a hat or something? Because they pick his red hair.
So the day Damian's gone to work that night, but that day you're going to your sister's. She had a in-home party.
Yeah.
And you've got the kids. You talk about that day, which really, really stuck with me. Obviously before what happened with Damian, but that day with you feeling just queasy and on edge and just
so unwell,
feeling just like upset stomach, just feeling out of sorts, but couldn't put your finger on why. This is during the day, and so Damian was on night shift, wasn't he? He was finishing at early hours in the morning, but you taking the kids to stay at your mum and dad's, so he could sleep, because we all know that ain't going to happen with two babies at home.
Yeah.
Not a chance. But you felt like you wanted to be home. I think you do anyway. You would with two littles. You want to be home, but you're doing the right thing. But that day you just felt out of sorts.
Yes.
But you went through the motions and you went to your sisters and you did all that. And you said, which sticks in my mind, when you drive, because you'd have to drive past your house.
Twice that afternoon
to go to your mum and dad's, and you felt like you just wanted to go home. So obviously you've spoken to Damian throughout that day and when he's woken and things, and then Damian's gone to work as he would normally for a 10 o'clock shift that night.
That Sunday, I think the Sunday nights they did a 6 p.m.
6
shift.
p.m. till 2. It's supposed to be 2 in the morning. So you're at your mum and dad's, or then you go back home. He's gone to work. You go back home. You put the kids down. You feel okay then because you're at home. You start to
really
feel
settled after that.
Yeah. So
it was the strangest thing because I'd felt horrible all day, and then getting home, getting the kids into bed, and then going, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. And it really was. It was. I remember sitting on the couch feeding Grace, and I can still see myself doing it. Feeding Grace, thinking, oh, this is so peaceful. Damian will be home at 2. We'll go and do whatever the next day when he wakes up. And then I went to bed. I was like, oh, well,
you're still on maternity leave then, aren't you?
Yeah,
with
I took
Grace?
12 months with Grace. Yeah.
So kids are in bed. Nothing better is though when your kids are sleeping, you're settled. Damian's doing nothing out of the normal. He's gone to work as norm. Like you said, you've been off all weekend, but you were home and just settled.
Yeah.
So you've gone to bed, fast asleep, not a care in the world. And then what happens?
Get woken up by a knock on the door.
What time was that?
I think it was around midnight. And I was like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh, I must be hearing things. And then again, it got louder. And I'm like, oh, maybe Damian's left his keys somewhere and he can't get in. Or maybe he just came home early and I'm like, oh, maybe I locked the internal door to the garage. And so I got up and I couldn't be bothered turning the lights on. So I grabbed our big mag torch. Like the police used to have these big, long black mag torches. And grabbed that and I've got it up over my shoulder and I've got the light on and shining it up the hallway as I went to check the garage door, looked through the side glass on my door and I could see Gary in full formal uniform.
And Gary was...
he was an inspector at Damian's office.
Yeah.
And I'd met him at the Christmas party the December before when I was pregnant with Grace.
Right.
And I looked in and I went out and I went, oh, no, I'm not answering it. If I just go back to bed, it's just not real.
Do you know, I mean, you're in the job. You know, you've done those knocks at the door, right?
Yep.
So you're thinking, are you kind of in fight or flight mode then? You know what's coming, so you're not wanting to answer the door because you don't want to because you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to open it because I went, as soon as they come in, this is something.
So there was three of them there?
Yeah, so I could see Gary and Toddy, who worked with Damian, who I actually met prior to joining the job. He was a detective. He'd been a detective for a long time. And I met him when I worked at DPP before I joined the police. And then Jules, who was another officer who I'd met years ago in my first year, and she was also working in Damian's office at the time. And I could see them and I'm like, he's brought reinforcements. This isn't good. And...
So can I ask, is there a thing with that? There has to be two, right? There has to be two of them?
Not all the time. There's no protocol.
Right.
Ordinarily, if it was, and this isn't to sound offensive or anything, but if it's a general member of the public, it would just be uniform guys that come, unless, of course, there's something more important that needs to be discussed, and it would be someone of a higher rank.
Yeah.
So ordinarily, if it was just whoever and you were delivering a death message, you would just be tasked through our radio system to go to an address and give the family the information that their loved one has passed and try and get some supports around them and see what they need and what have you. And then, you want to spend time with them, but you also sort of want to get out of there as quick as you can because it's not, as you know.
Yeah, awful.
I'm not preaching to the converted here.
No, I don't know how you guys do it. I just don't.
Yeah.
So for obviously very, very different in the sense Damian's, in the police, he's doing on line of duty.
Yeah.
The news that is about to be delivered, you've opened the door. Mm-hmm. You still don't know what's coming, but obviously you then know without a shadow of a doubt it's something to do with Damian.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And so, are you letting them in?
I didn't want to. That 2-second thought of, I'm not opening this door. I don't need to hear that.
No.
If I just go back to bed, maybe they'll go away.
Yeah.
Knowing that they wouldn't have gone away, they would have jumped fences and whatever and tried to get in elsewhere. And I'm thinking, the kids are asleep. I better open the door.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a pro forma. You walk in and you say to the person, let's go and sit somewhere before you say anything because you don't want to be picking them up off the floor and you don't want anyone to get hurt more than what you're about to tell them.
Yeah.
And they said, come and sit down. The lounge room was just off to the side. And I'm like, no, I'm all right. And then they said, Sonya, you need to sit down. I went, I don't want to sit down. And they said, please come and sit down. I went, can you just tell me what's happened? And they're like, yep, Damian's gone to an armed robbery tonight and he was shot. And I sat there and went, well, where was he shot? Like, where on his body? Thinking, your brain goes into that, I'm going to fight this. Tell me something that's good. You've just given me the worst news of my life. Tell me something that's good. And then they said, I don't know where. I can't tell you where. We're not entirely sure. I'm like, well, where is he? He's at the hospital. Okay. So what do we do now? And, oh, well, we need to go to the hospital. I'm like, okay. So, and then I start rattling off all these offenders' names. Is it this one? Is it that one? Is it blah, blah, blah? You know, people, because at the time there were quite a few armed robberies that were going on.
Is that so you can kind of, like, obviously that's your initial police officer yourself, but are you trying to piece things together?
Yes, I want to know the whole story.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to know the whole story straight away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm no fault of anyone's whatsoever. There's reasons for people telling you certain information. But me being me was like, just give me the whole story now so I can at least start to comprehend what you're telling me. But I started to go through this list of offenders. I'm like, oh yeah, Damian was chasing him last week, and is it this guy? Or I know this one was wanted. And they're like, no, it's none of them. And I'm like, oh, well, have you got who did it? And they look at me and they go, yeah, there's 2 people in custody. And I'm like, okay. I sort of sat there and I'm like, oh, I need to go and get dressed, because I was in my pajamas, my photo pajamas. And so Jules sort of followed me into our room, and I'm like, what do I need to do? And she's like, you wanted to come in here to get dressed. I'm like, oh yeah. What do I need to get dressed into? Like, my brain just went, I knew I needed to do something.
Yeah.
But the logic just went out the window. Anyway, so she was there just sort of keeping an eye on me, and that took a while. And then I went out to the kitchen, and by the time I got out there, my best mate Trudes was there with another girl we worked with. And I'm like, what are you doing here?
Was Trudy working that night too?
No. She'd been called by one of our mates, Lockie, who was in CIB. Oh, no, he wasn't. He was still at Runners at the time, working with us there. And he had told her what had happened, and everyone who was working that night heard it on the radio that there'd been an officer shot, and it was Damian.